Welcome back to Success by Design. I'm Katie Decker-Erickson, and today we're going to talk to the design firm that has already proven it can make money. I see you. You're not trying to get your first client. You're not trying to figure out whether people are going to pay you, and you're already at six figures, maybe multiple six figures, and maybe you have a team or you're at even seven figures. And you have a healthy referral network, solid work coming in, a great marketing campaign, and enough experience to know that simply doing more of what got you here isn't going to be what gets you to the next level, and you want to do more. See, the next stage is going to require a whole new set of decisions. And some of that advice that is useful when you're trying to establish a business and that seems to be all over Instagram and a number of other coaches are spitting out, it actually becomes unhelpful once the business is established. So this episode is about what I would ignore if I were strategically growing a design firm today and what I would focus on instead. Hey, everybody, welcome back. And I'm going to dive right into the advice I would ignore right now if I were building a 6 to 7 figure or 7 figure to multiple 7 figure design firm. And I would first of all start ignoring the advice to chase revenue without interrogating what that revenue is. See, your question now no longer is simply, how do we make more money? You see, you've already figured that out. The better question is, what kind of revenue are we actually adding to the business? Because not all revenue is equal revenue. And that's a really, really key distinction. A $100,000 project with a strong margin, clear scope, repeatable process, and client who owns 10 more properties is completely different than a $100,000 project that consumes your entire team and results in endless revisions, requires you to be involved all the time, and leaves you with almost nothing at the end. And that top line number, that looks identical. It's $100,000 either way, right? However, the business impact is not identical. And this is where established firms have to get serious about understanding the revenue by service line and client type, your gross margin, your labor burden, the project duration, the revision patterns, procurement profitability, founder involvement, repeat business potential, even referral potential. And you should know which projects are making money and which projects create future money and which projects merely, well, keep you busy. I will say at my firm ColorWorks, a relationship with an owner or operator who has multiple assets is all we are looking for, because that is a strategic value position. It's what fast food restaurants call the lifetime value of a client, an LVC. We're doing the same in our firm. We're not taking the one-off projects. We're building based on relationship, not on projects. What does this mean? It means I'm not only evaluating the current fee, I'm looking at who they are, their portfolio, their operational fit, the likelihood of repeat work, and the opportunity to expand into other service offerings that we provide, whether that's commercial interiors, FF&E, our procurement, marketing support, whatever it may be. That is strategic growth, because more revenue is just not enough for me anymore. You want better revenue. Second of all, I would ignore the advice to add more services every time a client asks. And this is one of the easiest ways for an established firm to become operationally messy. A good client asks instead, can you do this? You want to serve them well, and you end up saying yes. And then another client asks for something adjacent. I want to be very clear. This isn't scope creep. We love scope creep when it's within the scope of what we offer. This is scope creep and you coming up and drumming up new services and processes and systems, all because you want to serve this client. And you keep saying yes. And suddenly your firm offers 17 things, half of which exist because one person asked for them 3 years ago. See, in established firms, you become more disciplined. Every service creates an operational obligation, and it's going to need pricing and scope language and a process and quality control and all these things. And before I added a service today, I'm going to tell you the hard questions I would ask myself. And it's not just, did the client ask for it? Instead, it's, does this increase the value of an existing client relationship? Can we deliver it profitably and repeatedly? And does it strengthen what we want the market to know us for? If the answer is no, it probably does not belong in your business. See, the goal is not to become capable of doing everything. The goal is to become exceptionally valuable in a clearly defined lane. All right, number 3, I would ignore the advice to hire because everyone is busy. Busy is a terrible hiring strategy. At this level, hiring without diagnosing the actual constraint can get so expensive. And as we talked about last week, it also creates an immense amount of chaos in your company because now you're taking chaos and you're adding another person to the chaos, which only amplifies the chaos. It doesn't mitigate it. Is there truly more work than the current team can handle? That's the question you should be asking. Also, sit with yourself and say, is the process inefficient? Are senior designers doing administrative work? Are you as the founder approving things that should no longer require founder approval? And is the project management weak? These are the deep-seated questions that I want you to sit with because at 6 and 7 figures and beyond, headcount can become a vanity metric. It has nothing to do with what is actually valuable. See, I care far more about revenue per employee, the role clarity, utilization, and whether each hire removes a meaningful constraint, either from the business and more importantly from me. See, that right hire should create leverage for you. If adding a person simply allows you to continue operating inefficiently at a larger scale, that is not leverage. I call that expensive avoidance, and it can break you. All right, number 4, I would ignore the advice that the founder should stay close to every project. By now, you probably know you just can't. There is a point where founder involvement does create value, and it's deeply important. But there's also a point where founder involvement destroys your capacity to actually get where you need to be. Established firms have to know the difference. If every client wants you personally and every team member needs your approval and every presentation requires your edits, oh my gosh, you're not running a company. You're running something that is totally dependent on you. And eventually you run out of room. So your next stage of growth requires identifying what truly is required of you as the founder. And folks, this is just an honest emotional moment. There's a point in ColorWorks where I had to let go. I know my children would be cueing the song from Frozen right now if they were here, but we have to let go of so many things, not the critical things. And if you're saying to yourself, well, everything is critical, then you don't have your processes dialed in, you don't have your systems dialed in, and or you don't have the right people in the right seats on the bus. The next stage of growth requires identifying what you actually need to be doing. Maybe it's key client relationships, business development, creative direction. Maybe it's major presentations or pricing strategy. I know in our firm, I start with the mood board and then I hand it off to see what they create. I also handle all of the pricing in our firm. I know exactly what we should be charging. I know what our clients tolerate and what they expect of us based on the relationship. That comes to me and all of the hiring. Strategic partners absolutely fall within my purview, as do high-risk decisions. But if you were in the day-to-day grind, the minutia, the following of the systems and processes, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you either need better systems and processes or you need a better project manager. That is not where you belong if you want to grow. See, everything else needs a decision path that doesn't automatically end with you, the exception being these key areas I just mentioned. So your team needs to know, what can I decide? What requires review? What requires escalation? What does excellent work look like here? And when do we involve Katie and when do we keep moving? See, that is how our business gains capacity without losing quality. And I do not want to remove the founder from this. Don't take yourself out of the equation. I do want to reserve the founder for the places where the founder actually creates disproportionate value. That is what you should be doing. And if you are not doing that, then we have a problem. All right, number 5, I would ignore the advice to market more before fixing your positioning. See, established firms often respond to a growth goal by increasing marketing activity. Oh, we don't have a pipeline, let's do marketing. I see this in my coaching clients all the time, especially in the current economic reality that we're in. I've always been a referral-based business and that's worked out well, but now I don't have any referrals or I don't really do marketing. And so you're like, let's do some postings and some emails and some events and some networking and see what sticks. The problem is that is so vague, and just increasing your visibility simply helps more people misunderstand what you do. You are not trying to please everyone. You're trying to please the right ones, which is why with my coaching clients, I back into it. Who is your target market? What are their wants? What are their needs? How do they communicate? These are the questions we're asking. So we are, instead of taking a shotgun approach, we're taking a sniper approach to picking just the right people we want to work with. At this stage, you have to go sharper by asking, who are we trying to become the obvious choice for? And what problem do you want to solve better than most firms? What kind of work should trigger someone to immediately think of you? I know for ColorWorks, saying we are an interior design firm, it just doesn't get it done. See, there's a much stronger position around understanding multifamily, commercial environments, repositioning, exterior color, FF&E art, and quite frankly, the business realities behind those spaces. See, that specificity for our clients matters because sophisticated clients are not only hiring your taste, they're hiring pattern recognition. They want someone who has seen the problem before. They want someone who understands. They want someone who can anticipate what is coming, and they want to know that their money is not going to be wasted. This is what established firms should be marketing, not simply the portfolio, but the expertise behind the portfolio. In fact, I just had to email a client from our firm yesterday who had gone out and gotten a competitor's bid that was about $20,000 cheaper than ours. And he said, well, why can't I do this? And I said, well, first of all, they're counting on recycling some of your furniture. Did you notice that in the scope? And second of all, they give you an approximation, not a not to exceeds amount. And third of all, they're going to let you do as many revisions as you want, which tells me they don't have a process that they're abiding by. And fourth of all, they're not even giving you a clear communication path. They're saying you can log in via a portal. Is that something you want to do? For a commercial client, that is the worst idea ever. In fact, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this client and what they do decide to do. I will be following up via phone call later today for that very reason. Also, number 6, I would ignore the advice to take every good opportunity. And you're probably driving down the road and thinking, what? Why wouldn't I? See, once your firm is established, I want to tell you right now, good is no longer a sufficient standard. The question becomes, is this opportunity strategically useful? There are plenty of good opportunities that can still take you the wrong direction, folks. And a project may pay well, but require building an entirely new delivery system. Or maybe a speaking opportunity may sound impressive, but put you in front of people who will never hire you. In fact, as a coach, I just backed out of such a speaking opportunity just this last week. Was it hard to do? Yeah, it was. But the reality was the client didn't have enough people at the table and had not marketed it for me to be worth my while to get on a plane and show up. When I called to ask them, how do you feel about this? They said, we totally get it. I said, let's do this. At the end of your conference, please put together a strategy of what you want this to look like next year. And let's build out something amazing and marketable that really speaks to your target market. Good people will understand that. Good people that you want to do business with will show up for that. But being good is just not good enough once your firm reaches this point. See, that partnership may look exciting, but it could consume significant leadership attention. And a client may be prestigious, but fundamentally wrong for your process. And that doesn't make you wrong. It just makes them the wrong fit. See, at this stage, opportunity selection becomes a competitive advantage for you. So I would evaluate opportunities based on more than immediate revenue. Instead of revenue, let's talk about profitability. I want to talk about market visibility. I want to talk about if they're going to be a repeat potential client. What is their relationship value for you? And by the same token, what is their operational burden? How are they going to develop your team? Where are they located? And what are the implications of that? And how much of your time is it going to take? Because as you hear me say over and over again, founder time is the most critical thing that you have. The biggest risk for an established firm is not always the lack of opportunity. Sometimes it's too many opportunities and too little discipline. This is the time when you say no to say yes to the right thing. All right, number 7, I would ignore the advice to benchmark pricing against other designers. And I know this is a tough one to do because you're out there checking your market. And don't get me wrong, you have to know your market. That is useful. But building your price around what another designer charges is not. Once you have an established firm, you should have enough internal data to make smarter decisions than that. You should know what it actually costs your company to deliver the work and how much founder time is involved and where the projects historically go over budget internally. You also should know whether your procurement is actually profitable. And if it's not, it's one of my favorite things to coach to. And we should be talking about that. In fact, in this proposal from a competing design firm, Do you realize that they didn't even quantify the cost of procurement or in any way outline that in their budget that they provided to the client? They were just going to eat the cost on all of procurement. See, you should know the minimum fee required for the project to make financial sense for you and your firm. And from there, pricing becomes a business model decision, not a peer comparison exercise, because that is a dead end. Two firms can charge the same fee and have completely different outcomes. One has a disciplined process and strong margins and clean scope control, and the other has 3 rounds of undocumented revisions, senior staff doing junior work, and a founder donating 10 hours every week. Same fee, completely different business. And at this stage, I would price from the inside out. Number 8, I would ignore the advice that more leads automatically mean more growth. Yeah, if you're an established firm, you don't necessarily need more leads. Instead, you may need better conversion or larger engagements or more repeat business or stronger cross-selling. Maybe it's a better referral architecture or a deeper relationship with the client that you already have and is lovely. If you have clients who own multiple properties, which I imagine the vast majority of you do, and operate across markets or move from one acquisition to acquisition, then your growth strategy should reflect that. You may not need 100 new people. You may need 5 existing clients to understand the full range of problems that you can solve for them. That is a completely different marketing strategy. I would look very carefully at existing relationships and ask, where are we underserving a client who already trusts us? Where could we become more useful? Which clients have additional assets that we're just not talking about? Which architects and contractors and brokers, vendors, developers, and operators continually touch the kind of projects that I want to touch? And which relationships deserve more intentional cultivation? Because at this level, relationships are not a soft business activity. They are a very strategic part of your growth engine. Number 9, I would ignore the advice to scale before standardizing. Everyone talks about scaling and growing. Well, have you standardized first? Because if you haven't standardized, you have nowhere to scale to. If your team cannot articulate how a project moves from signed contract to close out, adding more projects is not a growth strategy for you. It's going to become a stress test. Before aggressively increasing your volume, I would want the major parts of the business documented and repeatable. Not because everything should become robotic. Design is never robotic, but the mechanics around design absolutely should be. That's your client onboarding. It's your file structure, your project setup, your communication expectations, design presentations, approvals, procurement, change management, billing, all of that. See, standardization gives established firms the ability to increase volume without increasing confusion at the same rate. That right there, folks, that is real scale. All right, here's what I would prioritize instead. I've told you everything I wouldn't do. I want to share with you what I actually would. And there's 6 key levers that I would look to pull. First, better economics. Know exactly where the company makes and loses money, not annually, but by project type, the service, the client, and the phase. These are your KPIs. You got to know your KPIs because you can't calibrate what you don't know. Also, stronger positioning. This is your number 2. Become easier to refer. People should be able to explain precisely why someone should call you. Number 3, I want you to find higher value relationships. And I want you to spend more time with the people who can generate multiple future opportunities, not only the people attached to the current project. In fact, this is one of my favorite things to coach to. How do we do this practically? If you're asking yourself that question, get on my calendar. Number 4, founder leverage. You have got to move out of the work that can be successfully handled by someone else, and you have to move toward the decisions and relationships that materially change your company into what you want it to become. No one else can do that but you. Number 5, operational discipline, and you'll hear me say it again and again. Build processes that allow excellent work to be repeated without heroic effort. Every project should not feel like a Hail Mary. And your 6th lever you get to pull is strategic selectivity. I love this one. This is stop measuring opportunity by whether you can do something. Ask whether doing it advances the company you are intentionally building. So here's your masterclass question. If your firm is already doing 6 figures, even on into low sevens, I would not spend the next year asking, how can we get busier? I would ask, where's the leverage? Where can one relationship create 10 projects? Where can one process eliminate hundreds of hours? Where can one hire unlock significantly more revenue? And where can one service become a larger engagement? Where can one piece of expertise separate you from 20 of your competitors? Where can you step away without reducing the quality of the work? And where are you currently accepting complexity without getting compensated for it? These are the questions that change an established business, because the next level usually does not come from doing 30% more of everything that you're already doing. In fact, I've never seen it work that way. It comes from identifying the small number of decisions that disproportionately affect revenue and margin and capacity and positioning. And that right there, that is the work that you need to be doing. If I were growing a design firm today, like yours, which is exactly where I am, this is where I would spend my time and where I am spending my time. As an active practicing designer, this is where I am hanging out in my own company. And I can tell you, it makes all the difference. If what we discussed today hits with you and you want to figure out how to get to the next level and you know you're not going to get there by continuing to do what you have been doing, I want to hear from you. Head over to fixmydesignbiz.com. Again, fixmydesignbiz with the Z.com. And let's have a conversation and see how we can really diagnose the problems in your business that are preventing you from getting to wherever it is you want to be. Because you're the founder, you should be the driver, not just the designer. Until next time, remember, your business should be working for you, not you working for it. Take care, and I'll see you soon.